Welcome everyone to today's Shop Talk with APPX. And our speaker today will be Steve Frizzell, who is with this company. I'll let him introduce himself. I'm Lisa Johnston. I'm the administrative coordinator for the Council of State Archivists. So today we're going to have a presentation. We'll have plenty of time for questions and answers, couple announcements at the end. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Steve. Steve, take it away.
Thank you, Lisa. Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to thank you for attending the webinar today. My name is Steve Frizzell. I'm with APPX Software located in Jacksonville, Florida. We are a software development company. We've been around since 1988, so we have over 35 years of experience developing and supporting software for customers all around the world. We have been working with state archives for about the last 15 years or so. And we are also the developer of Axiom, which is our flagship product for managing the archival holdings of state archives and record center holdings. We currently have, we will have by the end of the year, 6 archives that are using the Axiom system. We've also been a sponsor of COSA for about the last 10 years or so. That period of time working with COSA, we've become aware of a lot of the issues and problems that face state archives. And one of the problems that we became aware of about a year or so ago is the issue relating to the processing of emails. So today we're going to talk about some of the issues relating to that and how we might be able to address them using a new system that we've been working on for the last year. So the problem is that there are millions of emails that most of you have accumulated already over the last several years that you're trying to figure out how to process and what to do with them. And in the meantime, there's millions more emails being created. And so this is a massive problem that really needs a good solution. And so, the problem is that it takes too long to process that volume of emails manually. And even though there are some good tools available today, they don't really do everything they need to do. They each do some of the things, but none of them really do everything that you need. And as I said, the number of emails just continues to grow exponentially while they're still trying to figure out a solution for this problem. COSA recognized this problem about 2 years ago when they elected to participate in a grant at the University of Illinois. I think it was funded by the Mellon Foundation. And the purpose was to investigate the state of the preservation of emails.
I'm just going to search it here as well. Hard to
Okay, I'll try and get a little closer. Thank you. So the purpose of this grant was to try and investigate and report on the current state of processing emails within state government. And the grant was divided into 3 phases. And COSA just finished the grant, and they issued their final report in March of this year. And it's online on the COSA website if you want to look at it and read it in more detail. It's really interesting. The first phase of this report included a survey of the state archives asking them to identify the problems that they perceived relating to the processing of emails. And as you can see on the slide, they identified 5 major areas that were obstacles to successfully processing and preserving emails. We're going to talk about how we might address 2 of those issues, the issues of scale and the issue of technology. Scale means we have to be able to process those millions of emails. Technology is the software that we can use to do that. Phase 2 of the COSA grant involved testing the products that were currently available at that time. And the 3 products that were tested were the EPAB solution from Stanford University, the de-ArcMail solution that I think was developed by the Smithsonian Institute, and the LibreTom solution, which was, I think, a joint effort by the University of North Carolina and the North Carolina State Archives. So they had a number of participants tested these systems and for several months. And at the conclusion of the test period, after addressing many issues along the way, most of the testers were able to achieve some level of success with the tool that they were testing. I think the consensus was that EPAB was probably the most full-featured solution available. ArcMail was maybe the best tool if you're focusing on preservation. And then LibreTom was a command line tool that could extract information from emails and allow you to view the data. So as I said before, each of these tools has value, but they fall short in some ways. Some of them can't really handle the volume of emails that need to be processed. I think most of, maybe all three of them, are single user, which means you can't collaborate. You can't have more than one user processing a system, a collection of emails at one time. And so, and also I think there's some issues with maybe with EPAD if you're trying to process multiple collections, because the system has to be configured for a specific collection at a time each time you want to access it. So the solution, in our opinion, is to create a new software product, which would be a blend of utilizing human intelligence and artificial intelligence. We think it takes both of these to successfully process a large volume of emails, such as the state archives have. So why do we need artificial intelligence? That's really the only way that we can process that number of volumes. There's no way we can do it manually. We can't sit in front of the screen and review millions of emails one at a time and try to decide, is it a record or is it a non-record? Or what are the attributes of this email? Or does it need to be redacted in some way? That's just a process that isn't humanly possible. The state of Virginia can tell you the effort they've gone through over the last 10 or 12 years trying to process emails for their government. I think based on the data I saw, they essentially have a full-time person doing nothing but reviewing emails, and the best they can do is about 100,000 a year using manual review techniques. So they just continue to fall further behind if you have to rely on manual processing techniques. So I think artificial intelligence is the type of technique that we utilize in order to address the volume of emails that we have to address. So why do we need a person if we have these wonderful smart computers that can do anything, right? They're all going to take our jobs anytime now, I think. That's what I'm reading in the news every day. But computers really can't do everything that a human can do. So when you start looking at emails, you see right away that some of them really don't even provide enough information to classify them. Maybe all the email says is thank you. So how do you decide if that's a record or not? If all you see is thank you in the body of the email. But a person can look at that email, they can look at the context of that email and the thread that it's in and attachments that might be on it, and they can immediately tell that, oh, this is definitely a record. There's definitely not a record. It's very hard sometimes for a computer to make that call when there's not much information to base it on. Also, a computer using artificial intelligence techniques can analyze the emails, and it can come up with the result. But sometimes the results are conflicting. Okay? Depending on the criteria that the computer is looking at, it might decide that the same email is a record and a non-record, for example, because it has certain characteristics of each. So sometimes then you have conflicts that have to be resolved. Sometimes that's where a person comes into play. So a person still has to review those emails that have conflicts, the ones that it's not a clear-cut call one way or the other as to what type of email is being reviewed. Then finally, the results of the computer need to be reviewed for accuracy. They have to be validated. A person is used to do that. A person has to look at what the computer says and decide, is that valid or not? So the system that we've been working on for the last year or so has four major components. The first component is used to create an archive, an online computer-based archive of emails for an entity. And typically an entity would be a person. So that module allows you to ingest the emails for a person from one or more email accounts that they might have, and then process all of those emails, extract the metadata, make them searchable, and be able to view them for the purpose of appraisal and survey. And so you can easily load these emails into the system, let the system process them, and then see the results. And once you can see the emails, you can start to decide what value they might have and whether you need to process them or not. And so that's the first module, is to get them into the computer. The second module is where we define collections that have to be processed further. So a collection is defined by you, the user. You can define what a collection is. A collection could be one person's emails, could be the governor's emails, or it could be the emails for a position that was occupied by 2 or 3 different people during a period of time. So maybe it was the Secretary of State for a 4-year term, but there were 2 or 3 different people that occupied that position. And so the collection would be for the Secretary of State's position, and it would include emails from 3 different people. So a collection can be, it can include one person, it can include many people, it can be whatever you want it to be. It's up to you to decide what constitutes a collection. The third module, you've completed the processing of a collection. The third module allows you to publish those collections, optionally publish those collections for public consumption. If you make these emails available and searchable online for the public, then maybe you eliminate a lot of the freedom of information requests that you might get, because they can search those emails for themselves and maybe find the information that they're looking for without having to consume the time and resources of your agency. Some people are just curious. So if you put them online, people would just browse through them probably just to look at the data. So there's certain definitely good reasons to put them online. And then finally, since the system is able to identify which emails need to be preserved, the system allows you to export those emails and the metadata for them so that you can import that information into your preservation system for electronic records. So this system is not focused on preservation, it's focused on appraisal and processing, making them be accessible. All right, so if you have this wonderful system that's using artificial intelligence, and what is your role as the human part of it? Well, obviously somebody has to set the system up. So one of your tasks would be to set up the system. And then it's up to you to create the archive. Somebody has to ingest the emails from PST files, inbox files, zip files, tar files, whatever form they're in. We ingest them into the system, extract all the emails. And then the system can parse and index those emails for searching and review. And so it takes a person to manage that whole process. Even though the computer does a lot of the work for you, it still takes a person to manage it and to decide which emails should be ingested in the system and when. And then, of course, the person is very heavily involved in the processing of the collection. You have to first define what is going to constitute your collection. Who are the members of that collection? What's the hierarchy of members within the collection? Then, because the system uses artificial intelligence, you have to train the system. You have to teach it how to make the decisions that it's going to make. That takes a person to do that. Then you simply have to run the programs to do the processing. That's the easy part. So you just sit back and let the computer do the work that it does. And then after it's done doing the best it can do, then you have to resolve the issues on emails that have been flagged for review. And then finally, you have to validate the results. And then the fourth module, you have to publish, or third module, you have to publish the results, and then you have to export the permanent emails for preservation. So the system setup process is pretty trivial. In order to create the initial email archive, there's very little, if any, setup other than to define the entity that you want to ingest emails for. Most of the setup relates to collections that you're going to process. You can see here that you need to define the various classes of records that you want to be able to identify, typically records versus non-records. You need to be able to define labels that you want to assign to the emails. For example, the labels that identify the content of the email. It's got financial, legislative, legal, administrative content, and so forth. You can also define access restrictions that you use in your organization that you want to apply to these emails. You define the retentions that you want to assign to the emails, such as short-term, long-term, permanent, whatever retentions you want to. These are all user-definable attributes that you define. You can also set up lexicons and define the words and phrases that make up that lexicon so that the system can do content analysis using those words and phrases to try and identify the type of content in those emails. If you're familiar with EPAD, this is similar in concept to what EPAD has, although it goes beyond what EPAD has. You can also define patterns for identifying personally identifiable information. These patterns can be used to automatically redact sensitive information or to assign labels and other attributes to those emails. And finally, you can optionally preload all of the email addresses for your organization. So if you have a master file of all the employees of the state and you want to load all the email addresses into the system ahead of time along with their titles and their names, you can do that. Then the system will know more about those email addresses when it encounters them on the various emails. If you don't load that in, then it extracts that information. A lot of emails, a lot of times, the address includes the name, and so we extract that along with the address. And so that's the basic information that you have to set up for the system to be functional. So when we talk about the first module, which is the creating the archives for emails, there's a hierarchy there, a three-level hierarchy for each archive. At the top level, we have an entity. An entity is typically a person, but it's not always a person. For example, you may have an email address that people send emails to ask for research assistance. So the research center might have an email address that they use. And so you could have an entity could be the research center. And the email accounts would be the various addresses that are used by the research center. So an entity doesn't have to be a person, but each entity can have multiple accounts associated with them. And each account can have multiple groups of emails that are ingested into the system, which we call packages. For example, you might ingest a new batch of emails every year for a particular account. In that case, each year will be represented by a package of emails. So as I mentioned earlier, when you create an archive on the server, we're going to ingest the files. We're planning on being able to ingest those files from a variety of sources. For example, the desktop. On your desktop computer, you can drag and drop directories and files onto the system, and it will automatically then build a list of them and transfer them to the server from your desktop. Once they've been transferred to the server, we can unzip zip files and tar files, we can extract the emails from inbox files and from PST files. And then finally, we parse the emails to extract the headings and attachments and other information that we can extract from the email. And then finally, there's a very nice viewer that allows you to do keyword searches looking for emails. Also has facets on the sidebar that you can use to limit the search to certain categories and attributes of the email. And one of the nice things is that when you're looking at a particular email for the search, the system also shows you on the other side of the screen 100 of the most similar emails to that one in the system. And so if you're looking at an email that is about a particular topic, on the same screen you have 100 other emails listed that are similar in content. You can look at each of them individually at the same time. So when we parse emails to create the archive, we extract information from the email itself. So we extract domain names that are referenced and email addresses that are referenced. So this can be in the to address, the from address, the VCC, the CCC, or even in the content of the email itself. We can actually find email addresses in the body of the email and extract those as well. We also extract hyperlinks that are found within the body of the email. Of course, all the header fields and the various body sections that make up an email and the attachments all get parsed and extracted from the email. And the search program allows you to search the emails that you've ingested, and you can do faceted search on terms, you can do keyword searching, and the results are listed by relevancy based on your search criteria. You can then review individual emails or select groups of emails that you want to review one by one. We'll bring them up one after the other for you to look at. The viewer shows you the actual email. You can also click on the attachments and open them and look at them. If you want to, you can actually look at the original email by clicking on a button, and it will actually open a copy of the original email on your desktop using your email viewer of choice. So not only do we show you the email in our viewer, but you can actually look at it using a viewer that you might be more familiar with and compare and see is the one that we're showing you look like the one you see using your viewer. And of course, we have the list of similar emails. So the second module of the system is where we create collections. And collections have a hierarchy as well. So at the top level, we have a collection. That would be the name of the collection. More than anything, it's just going to be the grouping mechanism. So within a collection, then, we define groups and subgroups of members. So a collection has one or more members that make up that collection. Then each member is going to have email archives that you've already ingested associated with it. So the governor is a member of the group, and you would associate his email archive, or maybe part of his emails, maybe one account that he might have, can be associated with a particular collection. You can also restrict the emails that are associated by date. So remember earlier we said that a collection might involve people who were in a position for a period of time, right? So you may only be interested in the emails for a particular person for a certain range of dates. And so the system allows you to do that. So when you say this person is a member of this collection and we want his emails to be associated with it, you can say only for a certain period of time that we want to look at those emails. So it's got a lot of flexibility when it comes to defining collections and the contents of those collections. So it's important to think about how you want your collection to be structured and identify who the members are before you begin processing. Although you can always add more members later. So if you're processing and you decide, oh yeah, we need to put somebody else in this collection too, you can add him to the collection and begin processing his emails as well. So when we talk about processing, we're looking for personally identifiable information, identifying information. And then we're going to also perform lexicon analysis using AI techniques. We're going to look at the content of the emails and decide, do we have lexicons that can tell us about the content. We're also going to do content analysis based on the emails that you've reviewed manually and used to train the system. The system will use those emails to decide what type of content the other emails have. It's a pretty slick trick. It works pretty well. Then finally, we're going to do what North Carolina does with their Libra-Tom system. We're going to identify entities within the email content using natural language processing techniques. So that'll be another type of information that we can extract from the content of the emails. So when you run the processing phases of the system, what do you get? Here's a list of what you get. Automatic redaction of personally identifying information as well as other sensitive content. Automatic assignment of record classes. Is it a record? Is it a non-record? Assignment of access restrictions. Assignment of retention. Assignment of labels to classify those emails based on their content. Assignment of entity tags based on the natural language process. And then also the system will identify which of those emails might need to be reviewed by a real person, because the computer doesn't always have enough information to make a solid decision. So once you've completed the processing of a collection, then you may decide that you want that collection to be publicly accessible, in which case you would publish it. When you publish it, it would then become available to a web search if you want to be on the web, otherwise it could be on your private network. But it'd be searchable using a web browser, and you can search by keywords, by facets, date ranges, whatever certain fields that are significant. You can search by field content. And the system will build a list of emails which match the search criteria and display that. And the person who's then looking at the list and review individual emails and can decide if they want to export a copy of it in PDF format. So we don't actually export the actual email itself, but we give you a printed PDF version of the content of that email. And finally is preservation. Some small percentage of your emails probably will need to be preserved. Depending on the person, might be all of them, but other people might only be very select emails that need to be preserved. So we don't include preservation as part of this system, at least not today, maybe someday. But for now, what we do is we allow you to identify those emails and then export them along with their metadata, so that you can import them into whatever electronic record preservation system you may already be using. We think it makes a lot of sense to keep all of your electronic records in the same system, including emails that need to be preserved. But by the same token, there's no reason to keep millions of emails in the electronic record system, because they don't all need to be preserved. So that's what this system does. This system lets you manage those millions of emails that you need to have access to, need to make publicly available, but which don't need to be necessarily preserved. So that concludes our overview of the system that we've been working on now for about a year. Part of it is in beta testing. Other parts of it will be going into beta testing in the next month or two. Probably within about a 3-month period from now, it'll be ready for release. It's pretty far along. All the different pieces of it have been prototyped and tested. We're just in the process of putting all the pieces together into a system with an interface that makes sense. So we're pretty excited about it. We think it's going to have a lot of utility, a lot of usefulness for state archives in particular. And we're hoping that you'll agree with us. We will be at the COSA meeting in Washington in July. And at the COSA meeting, we are going to be hosting an open house on Wednesday night. It'll be a 3-hour open house reception where you can come by and we'll have snacks and a bartender. And we'll have a system set up where you can take a firsthand look at the system if you want. And you can get an idea of what it looks like, kick the tires if you want a little bit. Or if you're not really interested, come by anyway and just enjoy a drink and socialize and network with your friends. But we are planning on having a 3-hour open house on Wednesday night in Washington. I hope to see you all there. At this point, I think I'll open it up for any questions that you might have.
And just to let everyone know, if you have a question, you're welcome to type it in chat, or if you'd rather raise your hand, we'll unmute you and you can just ask the question directly. But while we're waiting, Steve, I've got a question. You mentioned that the system can automatically identify and redact text. Is the redacted text really removed, or is it just hidden, in which case it might be discoverable by a clever user?
That's a good question, Lisa. Some of the systems actually don't remove the text. Our system does remove the text from the public version of it. And so the email that we generate and the screens that we display on the public access portal are in fact truly redacted. The text is not hidden. It can't be discovered by looking at the source of the page or anything like that. It is redacted. It's gone. On the internal version of the search screen, we show you the redacted text. And we actually, what we do there is we also show you the actual text that was redacted at the same time. So you can see very clearly which blocks of text are redacted, and you can read the text at the same time on the screen. But that's not the case on the public viewable version.
Okay, so I can see it as a member of the archive with the right authority, but the general stuff that we put out on our website for the public to look through, those things are not possible for someone to dig through the redaction. That's good to know.
That's exactly.
We have a question from Janine. She wants to know, will the results of beta testing be made available?
Sure, we'll be happy to let you know the results of that. At this point in time, we only have one beta tester. We just started beta testing last week. And I think the state of Utah is beta testing the first module at this point, and I'm sure they'll be happy to provide some feedback once we finish the initial testing. We are interested in other archives that might want to participate in beta testing. It would be nice to have more than just one group testing it. And so if you are interested in beta testing at some point, please let us know. We can give you access to the server. The server is hosted in the Amazon cloud. And it's a secure server. You can connect to it with your web browser just by logging in. So there's no setup, there's no install. You simply log in and start using it. So we'd be happy to have some other beta testers join us as we go forward.
Great. Thank you, Steve. Anybody else have any other questions for Steve? Again, you type them in chat, or you're welcome to raise your hand and I'll be glad to unmute you. Here we go. So Derek wants to know, will this system communicate with the Axiom? It would be nice once the permanent emails are identified to access it using the existing information.
Yes, we do intend to be able to take the exported emails and ingest them into the Axiom electronic record preservation module. We also expect that we will be able to provide the exported data in a format suitable for ingest into Preservica. I know that about half of the state archives use Preservica for electronic record preservation, so we will definitely try to accommodate the requirements that Preservica might have with regard to ingesting those emails. If there's enough demand, we would probably take a look at what our Archivematica might need as well. I'm not sure how many people actually use that.
Thank you, Steve, for that answer. Anybody else have any questions for Steve? I think it'll be exciting to see this. So those of you going to Washington, you're going to get the opportunity to basically pop the hood and take a look at it. So I think that'll be a really great opportunity. Well, I am not seeing any more questions. Let's see. Okay, Kelly would like to know, will beta testing be available until you release the product?
Yes, I'm sure we will have beta testing taking place right up until the release of the product. At some point, we'll have a release candidate as opposed to a beta test, but we'll still be testing that release candidate as well.
Okay, so here might be an opportunity if this is a product you think has some use for you. You know, if you've got the time or the staff to check it out. So, thank you.
If you have a particular archive of emails that you'd like to try to ingest into the system, we can accommodate that. Again, all you have to do is make them accessible on your desktop and then drag and drop them, and we suck them right into the system from your desktop. So it's very easy to load your emails into the system and then process them.
Okay. Anybody else have any other questions or comments or anything we'd like to ask Steve? This is a great opportunity for you to talk to the people that are building products, and they like to have your feedback too on, you know, maybe something that you're like, hey, what about this? Or, hey, have you ever considered this? I appreciate everybody who's spoken up and provided comments so far. And Steve, I don't see any other questions. Is there anything else you'd like to cover today?
No, I don't think so, but I would like to thank everyone again for taking time out of their busy day, their schedule to attend this webinar. I hope you found it interesting, and I hope that you'll stop by and see us in Washington.
Thanks, Steve. Well, we thank you for taking your time to share with us what's new and happening with APPX. And just to let everybody know, we will have our regular member webinar here at the end of June. And this is the second part of our building and remodeling archives. This one's actually going to be about construction and lessons learned. So I hope you put that on your calendar as well. Next. And oh, sorry, we left an old one in, but watch for the SERI webinars this fall. There'll be some good ones as well. Next. Too bad you missed a good webinar. That was a really good one. Always, there's lots of ways to contact us at COSA, and we hope you take advantage of them. And finally, we want to thank you all for attending today. Thank you, Steve, for sharing this information. Thank you all participants for attending today. And if you have any questions, we'll reach out, and you have Steve's email, and or reach out to COSA and we'll forward it on to Steve. So thank you all for attending today, and we'll look forward to seeing you at the next webinar and or the next COSA Shop Talk. And yes, the recording will be available. It takes Becky a couple of days to put it up, and then it's usually available on our YouTube channel. So definitely you'll be able to have access to that. So thank you everyone for joining us today, and you have a great rest of your week. Take care, everyone.